Chicago, 1995. A bitter winter night. The last bus groans down 79th Street, headlights slicing through the snow. A teenager named Danielle Ross, clutching her backpack, boards with tired eyes after a long shift at the diner. She smiles faintly at the driver, takes a seat, and never makes it home. For nearly 3 decades, Danielle's disappearance haunted her family. The case went cold. Her mother died believing she'd never know the truth. Now, in 2023, Danielle's younger sister, Naomi Ross, a journalist, in her late 30s, receives an anonymous envelope. Inside is a single photograph. A woman bound to a chair in a dimly lit room. The date scrawled on the back reads, March 4th, 2023. Danielle isn't dead. Or at least, someone wants Naomi to believe she's not. Naomi begins digging, uncovering layers of corruption, buried police files, and a dark network stretching across decades. Every answer raises a deadlier question. If Danielle's alive, who kept her hidden this long, and why are they letting her surface now? Quick heads up before we jump in. If you're into real stories, strange disappearances, and the kind of truths people try to bury, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what comes next. All right, let's get into it. The snow had been falling since dawn, fat white flakes blanketing Chicago in a silence Naomi Ross had always hated. Silence to her felt like judgment. It reminded her of that night, the night everyone stopped talking about. She sat hunched over her laptop at the newsroom, the glow of the screen bleaching her brown skin into ghost pale. Headline drafts stared back at her, but her mind wandered, like it always did, to her sister. Danielle Ross, missing, age 17, last seen on the No. 79 bus. Naomi clicked the browser tab for the Chicago Tribune archives. 30 years later, Danielle's face still stared out from grainy black and white, braids tucked under a wool cap, that half smile like she knew a secret. Teen missing after leaving job on South Side. Naomi? She flinched. Michael from sports leaned over her cubicle wall, waving a coffee. You good? You've been staring at that screen for. I'm fine, she lied. He shrugged and walked off, the newsroom hum swallowing his voice. Naomi reached for her mug, stone cold. That's when she saw it. An envelope. No stamp, no address, just her name scrawled in black ink like it had been dragged by a shaking hand. Sitting on top of her notes. Her pulse ticked faster. She glanced around, but no one was looking her way. The newsroom clattered with keyboards and low chatter, oblivious. Slowly, she picked it up. The paper felt damp. She tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. Naomi's breath snagged. It was a woman, her head bowed, wrists tied to the arms of a wooden chair. The photo was dark, grainy, like it had been taken in a basement. Light pooled harshly from a single bare bulb. The woman's face was shadowed, but Naomi didn't need to see it clearly. She knew that jawline, that nose. Danielle. Her hands shook as the photo slipped, revealing the writing on the back. March 4th, 2023. 2 weeks ago. Naomi's vision tunneled, her heartbeat a frantic drum. She gripped the edge of the desk to steady herself, the newsroom spinning like a slow carousel. Danielle wasn't dead, or someone wanted her to believe that. And just like that, 28 years of silence shattered. Naomi stared at the photo, her reflection warped in its glossy surface, and whispered the name she hadn't spoken out loud in years. Dani. December 14th, 1995. Danielle Ross pressed her forehead to the frosted diner window, watching snow drift past the neon glow of Big Al's burgers and shakes. The clock above the counter ticked. Past 11:15 p.m. She was dead on her feet after the double shift, fingers raw from scrubbing dishes in hot water. Dani, you good? Called Miss Loretta, the night manager, as she wiped down a booth. Danielle forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. Loretta handed her a paper bag with 2 leftover burgers. Take these. Your mama's probably waiting up. Danielle's throat tightened. Mama always waited. Always kept the porch light on. She tucked the bag into her backpack and zipped up her thrifted parka, pulling the hood over her braids. Her hands were cracked and stung against the cold when she pushed the door open. Outside, the wind sliced like a blade, late effect chill. Streets glittered under thin ice. The orange street lamps cast long, lonely shadows down 79th. She walked fast, boots crunching over snow, eyes scanning for the bus stop. The No 79 was the last ride of the night, and if she missed it, she'd have to walk 7 blocks through Englewood in the dark. Her breath fogged the air as she slid into the plexiglass shelter. 2 men stood there already, one in a bull's jacket, head down, smoking. The other leaning against the glass, humming low to himself. Danielle kept her distance. Mama drilled it into her. Eyes open, mouth shut. Minutes crawled. Finally, the rumble came a long, low growl as the bus's headlights cut through the snowstorm. Danielle exhaled in relief. The 2 men climbed aboard first. She followed, nodding at the driver, a stocky man with salt and pepper hair and a thick winter cap. His name tag glinted. Raymond J. Evening, he said without looking up, punching her transfer. Evening, Danielle murmured, sliding into a seat near the back. The heat from the vents made her eyelids heavy. She rested her backpack on her lap and pressed her forehead against the cool window. Outside, the city blurred by in streaks of sodium light. The 2 men got off 3 stops later. Then it was just Danielle and the driver. She glanced up once, catching his eyes in the rearview mirror. His stare lingered a second too long. A smile flickered on his lips before he turned back to the road. Something in her stomach nodded. The bus didn't stop at her corner. It kept going. Danielle straightened in her seat. Sir, you missed. Road's icy, he said calmly. Can't stop there tonight. That's okay. I can walk. Not safe for a young lady to walk this late, he said, voice smooth, almost paternal. I'll get you closer to home. She gripped the strap of her backpack, heart thudding. Snow hammered harder against the windows, muffling the world outside. The bus engine droned like a lullaby she couldn't wake from. Then, slowly, it turned off 79th, into a narrow, dark street she didn't recognize. Danielle's breath hitched. The bus groaned to a stop under a dead streetlight, shadows swallowing the windows. The driver put it in park, and then he stood up. Naomi couldn't hear the newsroom anymore. The chatter, the clack of keyboards, it all faded into a dull hum behind the pounding in her head. The photo lay on her desk like a live wire, humming with danger. She slipped it back into the envelope and shoved both into her leather satchel. Her fingers trembled as she zipped it shut, every nerve screaming to get out, to breathe, to think. She left without saying goodbye. The city slapped her in the face with cold as she stepped into the December night, the wind dragging tears from her eyes. She walked fast, not caring about the icy sidewalks, just moving, moving, moving. By the time she reached her apartment, a 3rd-floor walk-up in Bronzeville, her legs ached and her hands were numb. She slammed the door behind her, leaned against it, and tried to steady her breath. The envelope felt heavier now, like it had weight beyond paper. Naomi set it on the kitchen counter, poured herself 2 fingers of bourbon, and stared at it like it might blink. Finally, she yanked her laptop open and typed. Danielle Ross missing case file. The search spat back headlines from the 90s. Teen vanishes after leaving work. Family offers reward. And then, silence. The last article was dated January 1996. She clicked through forums, scanned true crime boards, even found a Reddit thread titled Cold Cases in Chicago That Still Haunt Me. Danielle's name was buried in a comment under 200 likes. Bus driver interviewed. No arrest. No solid leads. The name jumped out at her like a knife. Raymond Jenkins. She remembered it from the old news clips. A veteran driver, clean record, father of 3. He told police he dropped Danielle near her stop and never saw her again. No charges filed. No follow-up interviews. Naomi's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. She grabbed her phone and called the only person who might still have answers. Detective Harold Kinney, the original lead on the case. The line rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. "Yeah? Detective Kinney?" Naomi's throat was dry. "This is Naomi Ross, Danielle Ross's sister." A pause. Then, "Jesus Christ?" "It's been a long time." His voice softened, but only a little. "You still looking for answers?" Naomi glanced at the envelope on the counter, her stomach churning. "Yes." "Then meet me tomorrow. Noon. Same diner I used to take statements at back then. Big Al's on 79th. You remember it?" "I remember." "Good. And Naomi," his voice dropped to a whisper that crawled through the receiver like smoke, "be careful who you talk to. Some folks still don't want this case opened." The line went dead. At 10 a.m., she broke. She pulled the photo out again and laid it flat on the table. Danielle, if it was Danielle, looked older, her face partially shadowed, but Naomi knew those eyes even in darkness. Except, this time, she noticed something she hadn't before. The background. Behind the chair, against the peeling wall, there was a shape of rectangle, faint but clear enough to make her skin crawl. A mirror. And in that mirror, blurry but there, was a reflection. A man. Naomi grabbed her phone and zoomed in, her pulse hammering as pixels broke apart. The figure was tall, stocky, wearing what looked like a heavy jacket. His head was turned slightly, and though the face was smeared by motion, one detail jumped out. A bright patch on his sleeve. A patch shaped like a winged wheel. CTA. Chicago Transit Authority. Her stomach turned to ice. She snatched up her laptop, typing with frantic fingers. Raymond Jenkins CTA. The search results rolled in like a slow tide. An employee profile. A grainy photo from 1994 Jenkins in his bus uniform, smiling stiffly beside his route sign. Gray creeping into his hair even then. She pulled the picture closer to the one on her table. The shape in the reflection had his build, his frame. Naomi's breath came shallow and hard. If Jenkins was alive, he'd be in his late 60s now, maybe retired, maybe still in the city. She dug deeper, scrolling through old union newsletters, retirement announcements. Finally, she found a post on a neighborhood Facebook group from last summer. Happy retirement to Ray Jenkins after 35 years with CTA. Enjoy those fishing trips, big guy. The photo showed Jenkins, older, heavier, grinning with 2 men at a backyard cookout. The caption was dated July 2022. Naomi's blood went cold. Ray Jenkins wasn't just alive. He was living his golden years, free, laughing, while her sister. She closed the laptop and gripped the photo so hard her fingers bent the edges. Her phone buzzed, startling her so hard she almost dropped it. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Static. Then a man's voice, low and calm. "Stop looking, Naomi." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Who is this?" A pause, then the voice repeated, slower. "Stop looking." The line clicked dead. Naomi stood frozen in her living room, every hair on her body standing on end. Slowly, she turned her head to the window. Across the street, a black sedan idled at the curb, and someone was sitting inside, watching. The bell above the door jingled when Naomi stepped into Big L's, the warm air carrying the heavy scent of bacon grease and burnt coffee. Nothing had changed since 1995, the same cracked vinyl booths, the same faded photo of Al himself on the wall, grinning like a mob boss. Detective Harold Kinney was already there, slouched in the back booth. He looked older than Naomi remembered. Thick white hair, skin like worn leather, and a body that had surrendered to gravity. But his eyes sharp, restless still, held the old cop fire. "Naomi Ross," he said, rising halfway as she slid into the booth. His voice was gravel over years of whiskey and cigarettes. "Damn, you look just like her." Naomi swallowed hard. "Danielle." He nodded slowly, then sat. The waitress poured 2 coffees without asking. Kinney wrapped his hands around his mug like it might warm the truth out of him. "You said some folks don't want this case reopened," Naomi started. "Why?" Kinney stared into his cup. "Because this city? It likes things neat, pretty on paper. And Danielle's case? It was a mess. No witnesses, no ransom, no body. Just a 17-year-old girl who stepped on a bus and vanished." "Not vanished," Naomi said, pulling the photo from her bag and sliding it across the table. Kinney froze, his weathered face draining of color. "Where'd you get this?" "Anonymous drop." He picked it up, holding it close, his hands trembling just enough for her to notice. "Jesus Christ." His eyes darted to the date scrawled on the back. "March 4th, 2 weeks ago?" Naomi nodded, pulse thudding. "Tell me about Jenkins." Kinney sighed, leaning back. Ray Jenkins was clean on paper. 30 years driving CTA, married, kids, church every Sunday. But the night Danielle disappeared, something was off. His route sheet didn't match his statement. Claimed he dropped her near South Princeton. Cameras were busted, of course. "Of course," Naomi muttered. Kinney lowered his voice. "You know what kept me up all these years? The timeline. From the time Danielle clocked out at the diner to when Jenkins logged his last stop, there's a gap. 60 minutes unaccounted for." Naomi frowned. "An hour?" "Yeah." His gaze was steel now. "An hour wiped from every report. Dispatch logs? Gone. Radio calls? Deleted. I wrote it in my notes, and next day, poof. My whole file gets reassigned, then boxed up. Boss tells me to drop it. Too many cases, too few cops." "Or someone wanted her gone," Naomi said, voice tight. Kinney looked at her, his jaw working. "This ain't just Jenkins, Naomi. He had help. People in uniform." Naomi felt her stomach turn. "You're telling me cops helped cover this up?" Before Kinney could answer, the diner door opened. A gust of cold swept in, and with it, 2 men in black coats. They didn't glance around like customers. They scanned, searching. Kinney's eyes flicked toward them, then back to Naomi. His voice dropped to a whisper so sharp it cut through her panic. Naomi didn't breathe. The clink of forks, the hiss of the griddle, the low hum of the diner, it all blurred into static as the 2 men in black coats paused near the door. They weren't cops. No badges, no uniforms. But everything about them screamed authority, the kind that doesn't need a badge. Kinney kept his eyes on his coffee. "When I say go," he murmured, barely moving his lips. "Head for the back door. It opens into the alley. Got it?" Naomi nodded, her heartbeat slamming in her ears. The men scanned the room like predators, their gazes sweeping over the booths. Then one of them tall, bald, with a scar slicing through his eyebrow-locked eyes with Kinney. Just for a second. A slow smile curled his lips before he turned to whisper something to his partner. "Go," Kinney hissed. Naomi slid out of the booth, trying to look casual as she walked toward the restrooms. Her fingers clenched the strap of her satchel like a lifeline. Behind her, she heard the scrape of boots on linoleum. She pushed through the swinging door and darted down the narrow hallway, finding the metal door marked exit. Her hands shook as she shoved the bar, the bitter air slapping her face as she spilled into the alley. Snow crunched behind her. Footsteps. She sprinted, slipping on the icy pavement, her breath burning her throat. At the end of the alley, headlights flared a black sedan, idling like a patient wolf. "Naomi!" Kinney's voice snapped through the dark. He burst out of a side door, his old frame moving faster than she thought possible. He grabbed her arm and yanked her toward a rusted Chevy parked behind the dumpster. "Get in!" They slammed into the car just as a shout erupted behind them. The tires screamed against the snow as Kinney gunned it, fishtailing onto 79th. Naomi twisted in her seat, heart pounding as the black sedan peeled out after them. Who the hell are they? She gasped. Kinney's jaw was a stone. Private muscle. Not cops, hired by somebody with deep pockets. Why are they after us? Because of what I was about to tell you. He swerved down a side street, the sedan's headlights slicing through the snow behind them. Ray Jenkins wasn't acting alone that night. The missing hour? That was for a handoff. A handoff? Yeah, your sister didn't vanish into thin air, Naomi. She was moved. His grip tightened on the wheel. And the people who arranged it, they weren't street thugs. They were wearing blue. Naomi's blood ran cold. You're saying cops took her? Not just cops. His voice was a growl now, thick with something like guilt. A special unit. Task force, they called it. Said it was about cleaning up the neighborhoods. But they were running girls, moving them off the books. Your sister wasn't the first. Naomi stared at him, her mind reeling. What happened to them? Kinney glanced at her, his eyes bleak. Most of them retired with pensions. Some got promoted. The car jolted as a gunshot cracked through the night. The rear window spider-webbed. "Get down!" Kinney barked, flooring the gas as another shot rang out. Naomi ducked, clutching the satchel to her chest, the photo burning against her ribs like a curse. Somewhere deep in her gut, she knew. Whoever wanted Danielle to stay gone had power, and they weren't afraid to kill to keep it. The Chevy finally stopped 4 miles south, its engine ticking in the icy dark. Kinney killed the lights and coasted into an abandoned lot littered with busted glass and old tires. Naomi's chest heaved as silence swallowed the car, broken only by the low hum of the heater and the sound of her pulse in her ears. "You good?" Kinney asked, voice calm, but his hand still gripped the wheel like a vice. "No," Naomi snapped. Her body trembled from adrenaline, her mind spinning like a carousel of jagged images. Danielle's face in that photo, the mirror reflection, the black sedan, the gunshots. What the hell just happened, Kinney? Who are these people? Kinney turned to her, his lined face grim. They're connected to the same unit that covered up your sister's case. Those two in the diner? They were sending a message. A message? Naomi barked out a bitter laugh. They were trying to kill us. He didn't argue. He just reached into his coat, pulled out a burner phone, and slid it toward her. New number. No calls from your old phone, no social media. They're watching everything. Naomi stared at the cheap plastic phone, her stomach in knots. This is insane. You want answers? Kinney leaned closer, his voice low and hard. Then you need to understand what you're up against. These aren't just dirty cops. They're lifers, retired chiefs, political donors, judges. They've been protecting each other for 30 damn years. And you just put yourself in their crosshairs. Before Naomi could reply, her own phone buzzed in her coat pocket. The old phone. She froze, screen glowing against the dark. Unknown number. Her throat tightened. Kinney's eyes locked on hers. Don't answer. But Naomi did, slowly. Hello? Her voice was a whisper. For 2 beats, there was nothing but static. Then, Naomi. The voice was low, female, shaky, like it was traveling from far away. Naomi's heart stuttered. Who is this? A pause. Then the voice cracked, breaking into a sob. Naomi, it's me. The satchel slid from her lap as every muscle in her body turned to stone. Danielle. It sounded like Danielle. Danny? Naomi's breath hitched. Oh my God, where are you? Tell me where. The line cut with a soft click. No. Naomi screamed into the dead air, stabbing at the screen, calling back. Nothing. She turned on Kinney, tears burning her eyes. That was her. That was her. He stared at her, jaw tight. Could have been a recording. A setup. It wasn't, Naomi shot back. Her hands shook as she gripped the phone. That was my sister. Kinney's gaze hardened. Then someone just let you know they've got her. And if that's true, Naomi? He exhaled slow, like dragging poison out of his lungs. They're not planning to keep her alive much longer. The address came from a whisper. After the call, Kinney worked his old network, 2 retired cops still loyal to him. 1 clerk at City Hall who owed him a favor. By midnight, Naomi sat in the Chevy as snow fell thick and silent, watching Kinney scribble the details on a scrap of paper. Jenkins, he muttered, passing her the note. Had a house on South Aberdeen. Bought it back in the 80s. Sold it quick after he retired last year. But here's the kicker. New owner's a shell company. No real name on the deed. Naomi's gut clenched. You think that's where they've got her? I think, Kinney said, sliding a clip into his old Glock. We're about to find out. The house sat hunched at the end of a block of sagging homes, its windows black against the pale moonlight. The curtains were drawn tight. No footprints in the snow. No cars in the driveway. Looks dead, Naomi whispered as they crept along the fence. That's the point, Kinney said. He slipped a crowbar from his coat like it was just another set of keys. The back door gave after one hard pry. Naomi's breath puffed white in the freezing air as they stepped inside. The smell hit her first damp wood, mildew, something sour lingering like rot. Her phone flashlight cut through the dark, sweeping over peeling wallpaper and a floor strewn with old newspapers. Each creak underfoot sounded like a gunshot. Basement's where they do it, Kinney muttered, moving toward the kitchen. His light found the door in the corner, half hidden behind a broken hutch. A heavy iron lock clamped it shut. Kinney jammed the crowbar in. Metal groaned, then snapped with a scream that made Naomi flinch. He pushed the door open. The smell hit harder damp earth and something metallic, sharp enough to claw at her throat. They descended into blackness, the steps sagging under their weight. Naomi's light trembled over the walls. Cinder block, water stains crawling like veins. Chains bolted to the far wall. Rusted, but recent scratches gleamed silver. Oh my God, Naomi's voice cracked. A mattress lay in the corner filthy, stained dark with something she didn't want to name. Beside it, a spoon, bent, burned at the tip. And on the floor, near the chains, a scrap of fabric. Naomi crouched, her hands shaking as she lifted it. A piece of denim, frayed, familiar. Danielle's old jacket had denim cuffs. She pressed it to her face, the smell of mold clawing her lungs, and fought the scream building in her chest. Naomi, Kinney called softly. She turned. He was standing at a wooden workbench, something small and black in his hand. A phone. Old, battered, screen spider-webbed with cracks. Guess what's on this? He said grimly. Before Naomi could answer, a floorboard groaned overhead. Then another. And a voice drifted down the steps, slow and calm, curling around the dark like smoke. Well, well. Detective Kinney. Couldn't leave the past alone, could you? The voice froze Naomi where she stood. It was calm, almost amused, and it carried the kind of confidence that came from holding every card in the deck. Kinney moved fast, pressing a finger to his lips and motioning her behind the old workbench. Naomi crouched, clutching the scrap of denim like a lifeline. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might echo off the basement walls. Boots creaked on the stairs, slow, deliberate. Kinney raised his gun, his jaw tight. "Show yourself," he barked, his voice low but steel hard. A laugh drifted down, smooth and dark. Then a figure appeared in the flashlight's glow. Raymond Jenkins. Older, heavier, but those cold eyes hadn't aged a day. He stepped off the last stair, gloved hands empty, coat collar turned up against the cold. His smile was a knife's edge. "Well," he said, voice soft and slick, "you found my little basement. Took you long enough." Kinney's grip tightened on the clock. "Where is she, Ray?" Jenkins cocked his head, feigning confusion. "She?" His gaze slid to Naomi, crouched behind the bench. He smiled wider. "Ah, you're Naomi, all grown up, spitting image of your sister." Naomi felt bile rise in her throat. "Where's Danielle?" Her voice cracked like brittle glass. He ignored the question, strolling past the chains like a man giving a tour of his garden. "You know, Detective, I always liked you. Thought you were smarter than this." His eyes glinted in the flashlight's beam. "You should have stayed retired. You should have let ghosts stay buried." Kinney stepped forward, gun steady. "I'm done burying girls for you." For a moment, silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Jenkins chuckled low and shook his head. "You really think I'm the only one, Harold? That's cute." Before Kinney could answer, a sharp creak sounded from the far corner of the basement. Naomi swung her light toward it, at first thinking it was another door. It wasn't. It was a person. A woman, curled up in a nest of rags behind the old furnace. Eyes wide, sunken cheeks, hair hanging in matted ropes. Naomi's heart stuttered when those eyes locked on hers wild, pleading. The woman whispered one word, her lips cracked and bleeding. "Run." Naomi lunged forward, ignoring Kinney's hissed warning, dropping to her knees beside the woman. Her voice broke into a sob. "Danielle?" The woman shook her head weakly. "Not me. They'll kill you. Run." Naomi's blood turned to ice. "Not Danielle. Someone else. Another victim." Jenkins sighed behind them, the sound of a man bored with the game. "Well, looks like you met my house guest." Poor thing thought she was going home, too. Naomi's pulse roared in her ears. If Danielle isn't here, then where? Gunfire exploded. Kinney fired first, the muzzle flash blinding against the dark as Jenkins dove for cover behind the furnace. Concrete dust rained down as bullets chewed the wall. Naomi dragged the survivor toward the stairs, her lungs burning, the scream tearing her throat raw. "Kinney, move." The night ripped open with gunfire. Concrete shards bit Naomi's cheek as she dragged the frail woman up the basement stairs, her breath ragged, her muscles screaming. Behind her, Kinney's gun cracked twice more, each shot deafening in the narrow space. "Go!" he shouted. "Don't stop." Naomi burst through the kitchen door. The survivor slumped over her shoulder like a broken doll. She stumbled through the trashed house, boots slipping on warped floorboards, heart thundering so hard it hurt. A blast shattered the doorway behind her. Jenkins' voice followed, calm even as bullets flew. "You can't save her, Naomi. You couldn't save the last one either." The words sliced her like glass. She hit the back door, shoulder checking it so hard the hinges screamed. Icy air slapped her face as she barreled into the yard. Kinney crashed through seconds later, blood darkening his sleeve. "Car move?" They half-dragged, half-carried the woman to the Chevy, flinging her into the back seat. Naomi dove in after her as Kinney slammed the gas. The car fishtailed onto Aberdeen, tires spitting slush. No headlights in the mirror, no gunfire. Just black streets and the hollow drum of Naomi's pulse. She twisted to the back seat. The woman was barely conscious, lips cracked, skin stretched over bones. Naomi cupped her face, whispering, "Hang on, you're safe now." The woman's eyes fluttered open, cloudy with pain. She mouthed a word. Naomi leaned closer. "Who?" The whisper came, thin as smoke. "Police." Naomi's stomach dropped. She turned to Kinney, her voice a rasp. She said, "Cops." Kinney's jaw was a slab of stone. She's not wrong. They drove in silence for blocks, until Kinney veered into an abandoned warehouse lot and killed the engine. Steam curled from the hood as the Chevy ticked in the cold. Naomi grabbed her burner phone and dialed the only person she still trusted, Marcus the Tribune editor, her closest friend since college. Her voice cracked when he answered. "Marcus, it's bad. It's worse than I thought. I need to meet." "Off the record." "Of course," Marcus said without hesitation. "Tell me where." She gave him the address of an all-night diner on 63rd, fingers trembling. "Come alone." "Always," Marcus promised. Naomi hung up, exhaling shaky relief. But when she glanced at Kinney, his face was pale, his eyes hard as winter stone. "What?" she asked, her gut already knowing she didn't want the answer. Kinney rubbed a hand over his jaw and met her eyes. "You trust him that much, Marcus? He's family." Kinney looked away, his voice gravel low. "Then family's why they're still ahead of us." Naomi's throat went dry. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Kinney said, sliding a blood-streaked hand over the Glock in his lap, "they knew every move we made tonight, from the diner to that house. And you're the only one who told someone where you'd be." The cold punched Naomi harder than the wind outside. Her fingers clenched the burner so tight it hurt. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "Not Marcus." "He wouldn't?" Kinney's eyes were pitiless in the dark. "Then why's that black sedan pulling into the lot right now?" Naomi spun toward the windshield. Headlights cut through the snow, slow and deliberate, the car rolling to a stop 10 feet away. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A text from Marcus. "Don't panic. Just talk to them." Her stomach turned to ice. The black sedan idled like a beast waiting to pounce. Headlights flared, washing over the Chevy's cracked windshield. Naomi's pulse pounded so hard it shook her teeth. Beside her, Kinney's jaw clenched, his Glock angled low but ready. "Stay down," he said. The sedan's rear door opened with a lazy creak. A man stepped out first broad shoulders, under a tailored coat, shoes that had never touched a dirty street. His breath ghosted white in the cold as he smiled. Marcus slid out next. Naomi's heart broke in slow motion. His hands were raised, palms out like he was innocent. But his eyes, those soft brown eyes that once swore loyalty over late-night newsroom coffee, wouldn't meet hers. "Naomi," Marcus called softly, his voice carrying through the icy stillness. "Please, don't make this harder." She gripped the burner phone until it bit her palm. "You sold me out." Her voice cracked like glass. Marcus's throat worked. "It's not what you think." Kinney cut him off with a growl. "Get behind me, Naomi." The tall man in the tailored coat stepped closer, hands clasped like a preacher at a funeral. "Detective Kinney," he said smoothly, his voice like silk over steel. "Always a thorn in my side." Kinney aimed higher. "Drop the sermon, Crawford." Naomi blinked. Crawford? Her gut turned to ice. She knew that name, Deputy Superintendent Elijah Crawford. Chicago royalty in blue. A man who shook hands with mayors and preached reform on the evening news. Crawford's smile never wavered. "You're trespassing on the truth, Harold. That's dangerous for old men." His gaze flicked to Naomi, slow and deliberate. "And for journalists who don't know when to stop." Naomi's grip tightened on her bag, the denim scrap inside crumpling under her fingers. And then she remembered the phone Tinny had grabbed from the basement, still zipped in her satchel. The survivor, the chains, the photo. If there was proof on that phone, if there was even one file, it could burn this whole thing to the ground. She slipped her hand inside the satchel, fingers closing around cold plastic. Marcus saw the movement. His voice cut sharp. "Naomi, don't." Too late. She yanked out the cracked phone, her thumb slamming the power button. The screen flickered, sputtered, and came alive. One file, titled December_95_final. Her throat tightened as she tapped it. The screen filled with grainy footage. Danielle, sitting on a chair in a bare room, her braids tucked under a knit cap. She was alive, terrified. Her lips moved, and Naomi's breath hitched as a voice crackled through tinny speakers. "My name is Danielle Ross. If you're seeing this, they're going to kill me." Naomi's vision blurred with tears. Kinney cursed under his breath. Crawford's smile thinned. "Take it," he ordered. The man beside him reached into his coat. Naomi ran. She bolted out of the Chevy, snow crunching like gunfire under her boots. Behind her, shouts erupted. The survivor in the back seat screamed. Kinney roared, a gunshot cracking the night open like thunder. Naomi didn't look back. She clutched the phone like oxygen and ran for the only cover in sight, a rusted freight container at the edge of the lot. Bullets spat sparks off steel as she dove behind it, chest heaving, lungs ripping for air. She pressed the phone to her chest. Danielle's frozen face burned into her vision. Her sister's last words replayed in her skull. "They're going to kill me." And Naomi knew if she didn't get this evidence out tonight, they'd kill her too. Snow drifted sideways under the halogen glow, swirling like ghosts. Naomi crouched behind the freight container, her breath ragged clouds in the freezing dark. The cracked phone trembled in her grip, the video still looping silently. Now Danielle's wide, terrified eyes boring into her soul. "My name is Danielle Ross." Her sister's voice played in Naomi's head like a funeral bell. Shouts echoed across the lot. Boots crunched snow. Kinney's gun roared twice more. Sharp cracks that ripped through the night, followed by a grunt of pain. Naomi's heart slammed against her ribs. Please don't be him. Please don't let it be him. "Naomi!" Kinney's voice, hoarse but alive, barked from somewhere near the Chevy. "Run! Get that phone out!" Before she could move, a silhouette appeared at the edge of the container, broad shoulders. Tailored coat, breath curling in the air. Crawford. "Enough games," his voice rang low, smooth as poison. "Come out now, and maybe you'll live to write a retraction." Naomi's fingers clenched the frozen steel. Her eyes darted to the phone. She had one shot, maybe her last. She slid it into the satchel, zipped it halfway, and scanned the ground. Her gaze landed on a length of rusted pipe half buried in snow. Slowly, silently, she wrapped her fingers around the icy metal. Crawford stepped closer. "This isn't about your sister anymore," he said, his voice coaxing like a pastor's sermon. "This is about the city, order, legacy. I protected Chicago. I kept the streets clean. Do you think anyone cares about some girl from Englewood?" Naomi rose from behind the container like a ghost, rage surging hot in her frozen veins. "I care," she said, and swung. The pipe slammed into his forearm with a sick crack. Crawford roared, his gun clattering into the snow. Naomi didn't wait, she ran, sprinting toward the Chevy, lungs burning, boots slipping on ice. Behind her, Crawford cursed, shouts erupting as his men gave chase. Kinney staggered into view, blood dark on his coat, firing a shaky shot that dropped one of Crawford's men to his knees. "Go," he rasped. "Don't stop for me." But Naomi skidded to a halt. Her eyes locked on the survivor still slumped in the back seat, barely conscious, her lips trembling. "No one gets left behind," Naomi hissed. She yanked the rear door open and hauled the woman out, looping an arm under her frail frame. Come on, stay with me. Gunfire tore the air. Sparks leapt from the Chevy's hood. Naomi screamed, dragging the woman toward the only light ahead, the glow of 63rd Street, a block away. And I. Kinney's shout ripped through the dark, just as another gunshot cracked. A sound that wasn't like the others. A sound that ended things. Naomi spun. Kinney fell. The world slowed. His gun dropped into the snow with a soft thud. His body folded, breath blooming in the icy air for the last time. No. Naomi's voice broke like glass. Crawford's shadow loomed through the swirling snow, his coat flaring like a dark flag. Gun raised again. It didn't have to be this way, he called. Naomi's grip tightened on the satchel. Kinney's sacrifice burned through her chest like fire. She ran harder than she'd ever run past the lot, down the alley, into the pulsing glow of streetlights, until tires screamed behind her, and the world became a blur of light and sirens. Police, real uniforms this time. But when the squad car doors flew open, Naomi didn't slow. She shoved the satchel into the hands of the first cop she saw, her voice a raw scream. Play the damn video. Phones came out. Body cams blinked. Officers stared at the screen as Danielle's broken voice spilled into the night. My name is Danielle Ross. If you're seeing this, they're going to kill me. Gasps cut the air. Cameras flashed. Crawford froze mid-stride, his gun hanging useless at his side as reality crashed down the proof out, live streaming into every lens and mic. Naomi collapsed to her knees in the snow, tears streaming hot down her frozen cheeks. Kinney's blood was on her hands, her breath, her heart. Sirens wailed. Radios screamed. Officers swarmed Crawford, pinning him against the black sedan as he spat curses that would never matter again. Naomi clutched the satchel to her chest, rocking forward, whispering into the cold night. Danny, I found you. I swear to God, I'll bring you home. Because the video proved she was alive then. And now the whole city would burn until Naomi found out if she still was. Not every story ends with justice. Some just stop where the paperwork does. But if you listened closely, this wasn't just about what happened. It was about what we ignore, the assumptions we let slide, the voices we tune out because they don't come in the right tone. Somewhere, someone's living with the fallout of this story, not as a headline, but as their everyday. So if this story stayed with you, don't let it fade. Shine it forward. Ask more. Doubt what's too quiet. Because what we choose to see or not see decides what happens next. Like, comment, share, not for clicks, but for clarity. Because awareness is how silence breaks and how truth finds daylight.